I'm Dr. Gifford, Superintendent of the Dartmouth Public Schools, and this is Dartmouth's Got Talent. My guests today include Gary Lara, lead teacher at the high school math department, and Ann Brown, math specialist at the Dartmouth Middle School. Today we'll be discussing the district's math program, including our curriculum alignment and opportunities that we offer for our students. So we hope you enjoy our show. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So before we get started talking about the math program, I'd like to ask each of you to just give our folks at home a little bit of a background, who you are and what brought you to Dartmouth, how long you've been here, and so maybe Ann, if you want to start.
Sure. So I taught in Fall River for 9 years before coming to Dartmouth, and I think I've been here, I think this is my 7th year here,
Okay.
As the Dartmouth, the math coach at the middle school, where I work with teachers on best teaching practices, aligning to the new curriculums. We've had a lot of changes in the curriculum in the last 7 years, and it looks like now that we're back to the MCAS and the Massachusetts frameworks,
Right.
we're going to settle down a little bit.
Right,
So
right.
I work to help teachers meet the challenges of the new standards that have been set for them and get there.
Yeah,
and work on that.
that's a great and important position, of course, because as you said, the changes that come at educators these days is just crazy. So to
Yeah.
have someone that can sort through them and
work
bring-
as a liaison.
Right.
So teachers can focus on the classroom
Right.
pieces and what they can do with kids for
Right.
activities to get the best learning and
good.
not worry as much about what to teach.
What to teach, yeah.
Or how to teach.
Yeah, beautiful, good. Gary?
I came to teaching following a career in engineering and finance. I've now taught for 16 years, 14 here at Dartmouth.
Okay.
It's my 2nd year as the lead math teacher.
And what is the difference? What happens when you become a lead teacher here at the high school?
It's you accept a little bit more responsibility for making sure the curriculum is organized and consistently implemented in the different classrooms. A little bit of coaching. It's a lot of different things.
Right, good. And I just have to ask you, what prompted you to leave engineering to come teach?
Well, I had children of my own,
Okay.
and as they became of school age, I had been kicking around the idea of teaching for quite a few years, and
Yeah.
that was the impetus.
Good. Well,
Yes.
we're happy to have you, so.
Thank you.
Good. So we'll get started, and my first question is really about the Department of Education. I understand offered a network focused on creating some math pathways from the middle school to the high school. So could you tell me about that experience and how it's influenced the work that we're all doing here in Dartmouth?
I think it was really exciting that actually Dartmouth contacted the Department of Ed and we hosted the math pathways, which was really nice. So that was down at Quinn, and we had, I think, 4 sessions, so 4, that we went to, and we started out just sort of globally thinking about it, and we sent a team from Dartmouth that included teachers from the high school, Gary, myself, Michelle Roy, and Tracy Oliveira, and Carl Robidoux. And we were looking to take a look at what would be the best math pathways to help ensure that kids would have as many opportunities graduating high school as possible, and to accelerate them in math if they wanted to go into a STEM career. So with that in mind, we also wanted to be inclusive and not exclusive. And one of the opportunities that a lot of districts do have is to accelerate students in the middle school or take a look at that. But the decision point for that happens to be at the end of 6th grade, and a lot of the thinking was that's very young, and then some students don't get into that, and how would we accommodate kids and be more inclusive?
Right.
And the more that we delved into that through the platform of the network, led us to the solution that we have today, that I know Gary's going to speak at the end of the program a little bit more about what our opportunities were, and allowing students to be challenged within the middle school
Right.
programming, but yet delay the decision a little later when they had a better idea maybe of what they wanted, what path they wanted to take for careers.
Right. I think that's really
So-
a great point. I always find that, to kind of force kids at an earlier age to make some kind of a decision is just not the right thing to do. They shift so quickly. As well as, I'm curious with the pathways, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later, though. seems that we always have to also educate our parents that sometimes. So do you see that as a challenge of maybe a child may not taking a particular pathway and helping the parents understand that it's
and
okay.
I think so, and I think that's been a challenge in the last couple of years where parents have actually called or reached out to me to ask me, and I've had some advice that I could give them individually, but I think now that we have solid platforms, that it's going to be easier for me to lay it out, opportunities and options for their children, and they can best select the one that they think would be most suited for their child. So I think I'm excited that there's different entry points for kids to get into if their goal is to get to calculus by the end of high school and which level of calculus.
Right. That's a great way to put it, to entry points. Because I always feel that no matter what topic we're talking about in education, that there should be numerous entry points for kids.
Agreed.
When they make those decisions, or they become more mature, or their gaps have closed, whatever it might be. So I'm really, really happy to hear about that.
That's what makes it inclusive. That's
Right.
what allows for flexibility for a student's plans to change or shift.
Right.
We can help for the student that's headed toward the humanities, and we can help with the student that's headed toward STEM careers, science and technology. We've got different pathways to be flexible to the student.
Right, right. So can you talk about the steps, and I know Ann's just kind of laid out the foundation about what you all were involved in creating the math pathways, and how difficult that might have been. I know there were a lot of voices at the table and some different thinking that went on, and so how did that kind of play out?
Well, and it was nice to have the network to meet with other districts and test out our ideas against their own and compare. But yeah, we gathered together a team, as Ann said, 8th grade teachers, 9th grade teachers, and the math coach, our administrators, and we dug into the standards, the math frameworks, the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks were our guide.
Right.
And the transition was the focus between middle and high school, between 8th and 9th grade.
Yes, to make sure that completely aligned, because our goal was then, I think, as you said, was to ensure that students that did want to accelerate are able to now do that more easily, and especially also the high school shifting schedule that we're going to see next year had to play into that as well.
Definitely.
So now students will have that year-long math course where sometimes now it could be first semester or first half of the year, and then not until the next year they had math. So I bet that will play in as well.
Yes.
That consistent pathway. Did you see any, while you had this math network going on, did you notice any or big takeaways from other districts maybe way off from us or way ahead of us as far as thinking goes, or any aha moments, I suppose?
I think a lot of the districts were struggling with some of the things that we do here. They were enormously helpful at the last meeting.
Okay.
I think where they had a protocol which was really interesting, where one person from your district would present your pathways. So the whole goal of this was to go through this process and get to the end and get your pathways made.
Right.
And then they would sit in a round table and discuss the points, the positives, the negatives, maybe hiccups, places that you would see. And no one from that district, the presenter or anyone else, was allowed to speak. So you were like a fly on the wall while these other educators that were in the same type of positions as you were talking about that. And that process worked immensely well for people being reflective and maybe making some changes or being more aware of things to think about as they move forward that might need to be revised. And one thing that I think came out for us, and Gary, you can speak to this as well, was just to be in our pathway that we have where you could take an algebra geometry with some parts of algebra 1 in it. The parts so an accelerated course that's going to double up and offer you the opportunity then to go into algebra 2, that we had a safety net and a good alignment with our algebra honors. In case a student had taken that on, and with the transition into high school, and maybe with the transition into extracurricular activities at a level that they hadn't done before, sports every day, had really felt that they maybe had taken on too much and would maybe need to drop down into algebra honors.
Right.
To offer those kids a place where it was like no harm, no foul.
Yep.
And then they could still accelerate at a later time
At a
if they
later
felt
time.
ready for it.
Good. Good.
So that
Yeah.
was a good point.
It was,
Yeah.
and I think mostly the takeaways from the other districts were subtleties, little things that
Yeah.
would help us fine tune.
Right.
Generally, every district has the same bigger idea,
Yes.
but it was very interesting to get their insights.
Right. Right. Little maybe logistics along the way. or
Yes.
just- yeah. That's good.
Other points
Yeah.
that were really interesting that I thought came out were ideas for maybe some help for the struggling students. That was something that was discussed at great length as well.
Which we all struggle with, of course. How do we offer that extra help? And just again, with the shift in the high school schedule, where we will have blocks set aside, learning support centers or academic support, whatever we're calling them for next year, at least we have that built in where we can have that support time. So talk about some of the changes in the standards that have taken place, and thank you, Desi. We're always undergoing some changes, and testing and how it impacts your curriculum. You talked about shifting the curriculum at the middle school in order to be able to transition into the high
Right.
school.
And that's been an ongoing process through the curriculum frameworks that came in from the national, the ones that we adopted. And then finally, Massachusetts has just revised them for hopefully, I'm hoping for a little while, that we get to stick with these. Some final refinements that
Yeah.
have had to do that. And it's not a switch that you can switch on or
Right.
off overnight.
Right.
It takes, some of these transitions take a little while. And I'd say that in 6th grade, they have been asked to do what traditionally had been a lot of what 7th grade did. And 7th grade has been asked to do traditionally
Yeah.
what a lot of what 8th grade used to do. And 8th grade has taken on a number of algebra standards
Yeah.
to the point that people that are my age would have considered them all algebra, mostly algebra. We had to learn the Pythagorean theorem to a level that I recall doing in high school.
Okay.
And students are asked to do systems of equations and to solve them using elimination, combination, different processes
Right.
and graphing. And so there's a number of standards that have been sort of pushed down, and I know that the challenge has been also taken into the 5th grade, where the 5th grade teachers had to step up a little bit to do that. And that just, teachers, that's part of my role, is to support teachers in that. When you have to start to shift and teach things to a different standard. You
Right.
used to teach it one way, and now you're being asked to
Yes.
teach it at a higher level in another way, and then add on to that. So.
Right, and that is, I wrote that down, thinking about the elementary preparation that has to happen as well, because you're pushing stuff down, so each level has to be stronger and stronger in what they're teaching, for sure.
And I think that had an impact at the high school level
Yeah.
as well, Gary. So
Yeah.
if you want
Also at the high school level, many Algebra 1 topics used to appear in Algebra 2. They've come down.
Yeah.
And some pre-calculus topics have come down to Algebra 2. And in terms of statistics and data analysis, that has now been integrated into the algebras along the way. So I think all in an effort to help make these higher level classes more accessible to more students.
I'm just curious, they've always talked about the importance, here we are talking about math, and we've put a lot of work into our math department at the school district, of course. And what are your thoughts about the idea that everybody has to have algebra to succeed later in life? We hear that so often, and I know even my own child was never a superb math student, and we just got him through, kind of thing. But just your
Well,
thoughts.
It's what we're trying to avoid is a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
So, but to some degree you have that. You have
Yeah.
Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 for all.
Right.
But our hope is that beyond that is the flexibility to pursue your interests. And your culminating math class could be statistics, could potentially in the future be computer programming,
Right.
could be calculus
Could
if you're
be.
interested in
Right.
a field that requires that.
Right.
To open up more options, I think, is important, and that's something that's being talked about
I think you're absolutely spot on. I'm just very thrilled with the options we're going to be offering. So speaking about that, one of our last things I want to talk about for a minute is, could you elaborate on these different pathways that students will be offered and how they're going to progress?
Okay, I'd be happy to. At the moment, we have 6 math classes here at the high school. And as I said, every student will take Algebra 1, followed by Geometry and Algebra 2. And there are different levels of those.
Yep.
And I can talk about that shortly. And following that, the 3 remaining courses are Pre-Calculus, Statistics, and Calculus. And that's where we ask students to consider where they're headed,
Right.
if they know.
Yep.
However, we have some students that take all 6. That's not unusual
Sure.
for very motivated students who love math.
That's right.
And certainly students are encouraged to do more than the minimum number, which is 4 classes.
And certainly anything that they want to do, or if they have questions, our guidance counselors will be well aware of these
Yes.
opportunities. They'll be able to help them because, as you just said, there are different levels, maybe an accelerated level, AP, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
And I
go
think the
ahead.
first level coming from 8th grade, which is the one I'm the most
Yes.
familiar with, from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, if they take the geometry with algebra, that is an accelerated
Right,
level.
right, right.
So much like an AP class, but just at the freshman level. So, and if parents have questions, they can call and
And I'm
ask.
sure they will.
Yeah.
I know
We're
we've
happy to
received
answer
a
them.
few from folks that over the last couple of years have just been looking for this opportunity for students that may want to accelerate. So I have to say they're pleased and we're very pleased.
Good.
I know that this has not been done without a lot of hard work because I think, again, you mentioned a minute ago about it's just not you shut the light switch and things have changed. Because our kids have to be caught up to speed. There could be gaps that happen, et cetera. So we're very thankful for the work you've done and what's to come. We're looking forward to that. And as I said, parents will be able to call the high school or middle school and ask questions about what's happening. And I'm just looking forward to seeing next year. So I'd like to thank you for coming today. I know this is a quick and dirty discussion about math, but I'm sure folks at home will really enjoy listening to this show. So thanks again for coming.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
So again, this is Dartmouth's Got Talent, and we hope you enjoyed our discussion today about the math transition between our middle and high school, and just really what's happening in the Dartmouth district relative to math. So until next time, have a great day.